Hey everyone, welcome to Fast Forward, the podcast about real conversations, not highlight reels. We explore the people behind the work, how they think, what drives them, and how they grow. Today, I am joined by Stewart Gandolf, CEO of Healthcare Success. Stewart has spent more than 20 years helping healthcare organizations grow through patient acquisition, brand strategy, and data driven marketing. Stewart, how are you?
Jeffrey, I'm having fun. Let's let's rock and roll here.
That's the key to life. How to manage your own career and have fun while you're doing it. That's the key.
As much as you can. It's not always fun, but we'll talk about that. So wherever you want to start, we can
No
go.
question. Yeah, so you built a marketing agency in healthcare. Kind of what led you to that and why you decided on healthcare marketing?
So jumping back even a little further, like I never thought I was going to get into marketing at all, and took a
Mm,
class in college, and a marketing class is a lark, and I really liked it a lot. So contrary to my advisor's advice, I moved away from engineering and into marketing. So that's a whole different discussion for another
okay.
day. But I was always attracted to marketing agencies, and I've done a lot in my career. I've done a lot of different things, but I just kept coming back to agencies. So I started off with the work on client side, then I went to work for an agency, worked my way up to J. Walter Thompson, which is a really, really big agency. Wasn't excited about big agency politics, which are a thing.
Mm,
And so moved out and did some other things and but eventually I was recruited to work at a company. I thought I'd be there for a couple of years or most, and ended up being there 10 years. And I was
mm.
a speaker going around the country teaching at back then individual doctors and practices how to grow their business through marketing. And that was very innovative for its time. Nobody was doing that. So I was a seminar leader. I was flying around the country, and I'm
Mm.
platinum. By the way, I'm platinum for life on American Airlines. It's how much I flew during those years. It's a lot of oil.
I can't
So
even imagine.
I got used to speaking. I got used to being
Mm,
on my feet, and so left the business for a while. I've quit after being there 10 years as VP of marketing. And this company we started as a hobby.
really?
Yeah. So the I was at the time it's a common thing now. They people call it refer to fractional CMO, chief marketing officer. I was actually literally a VP of marketing of three different companies at once for a while there, which by the way is I don't recommend it. It's inherently unstable, but it was fun and very profitable. But during that period, I decided what if I could create my own agency without spending really a cent of my own money? How can I do that? And so I sold one of my former clients. We went and reached out to some former clients. They hired us for some projects. We used that money as seed money and created a website. And this is 2006. So this was still new. Back then, we decided, I had a partner at that time that I just wanted to do SEO and paid search and thought leadership. And to this day, we get clients from thought leadership and SEO primarily, like to this
You
day,
do.
20 years later. So that's how it started. It really was a hobby. I remember writing my first blogs. Some of them still get traction organically. Oh, another thing, real quick, that might be useful to your
Yeah.
listener. We were focused on SEO, which back then was a lot easier than it is today. We were number one worldwide for anything we wanted there for a number of years. But the other thing we did, though, is we leveraged relationships. So, I wrote a column for dental economics. We did a distribution deal for medical economics. So we had enough credibility by that point that people would talk to us. So that
Mm,
helped. Like one of the things I asked you before we started, you want to keep it real?
yeah.
I get if you're just getting started and you want to start an agency, it's just really hard without having the experience and background. It really was easier for me because I already done a lot by the time
Right.
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it was easier.
Especially in digital marketing, where it comes with a reputation.
Yep, for sure. What else would you like to know? That's a rough overview. I can drill down wherever you like.
My other thought was healthcare. What was it about the healthcare industry that you felt like there was a void, or what was it that really helped you realize that that was what was gonna be?
So it's really funny. I would say if your audience includes people that are creating their own agency, I would give you three pieces of advice: niche, niche, and niche. It's
Sure.
really hard to be generalist. It always was, but now it's almost impossible. So in our case, I stumbled into healthcare. Fun fact: when I used to live in San Diego, when I was right out of college, I would drive by this hospital that's to this day has a stork in front of it on the freeway, for its maternal center. I thought that's interesting. Hospital marketing. That's kind of a fun thing. I never would have thought of
Hmm,
that. It's like it's still there, by the way. I saw it last time I was in San Diego. But I thought, I wonder what healthcare marketing's like. And I didn't do any before I started that other company. I was working in
right.
a lot of credit card stuff, the financial stuff. when I was at
Which
J.
is
Walter.
completely different.
Yeah, totally. But what's interesting is when I stumbled into healthcare specifically, it turned out that most people hate dealing with doctors, and in healthcare, they feel like, oh, doctors. And, we don't really work with doctors anymore either. We're working at a higher level with larger
Yeah.
clients. But back in the day, I could talk to them and they would trust me because I knew what I was talking about. With doctors, it was all about, are you credible? I mean, they're obviously highly educated and they also are very smart. So they don't want to hear, platitudes and general stuff they could read online or like, when you're a stockbroker and you're talking to them stuff about what Susie Orman talks about, they're like, get out of here. I knew that before.
Mhm.
So it really was helpful to understand. As I mentioned, I fell into healthcare, but I really could work with them. I could think like they did, have like also maybe just I'm a little lucky in this regard and a little cursed at the same time. Like I don't know if I'm a creative or analytical. I do both. So
Mm.
there's advantages to that, right? But there's also advantages because it's like I got to work on these finances, but this is fun. But I got this, it's like it's a
Yeah.
personality. But anyway, that sort of right brain, left brain really worked well because I was able to think like the doctors were because they were very analytical, right?
Mm.
So put things in frames that they understand, but also not bore them to death. And I feel like that built trust really quickly. Another thing, Jeffrey, that might be helpful to your listeners, or whatever business they're thinking of starting, one thing about that experience that is irreplaceable was I had so many at bats. Like every weekend, I was on the road like every other weekend, and every weekend I'd have 6 different businesses I was consulting for. So if you do that
Wow.
over 10 years, that's
Yeah.
over 1,000 businesses I consulted for. It's kind of like Neo. You just anticipate their moves and just go, I'll do this or I'll do that.
Mhm.
That was really helpful too.
But you're crediting the volume you had that at that time.
I said it's rare to get that, but if you can, it's really helpful.
Yeah.
It's hard to get, like, it's like, but I guess again, it just comes back to, going back to what's been successful for us is over and again building thought leadership to this day. So another thing I would add, if you're any business that's doing B2B, thought leadership is enormously important. And then, so that sort of by definition means you're a thought leader, which means you need to really understand your stuff.
Mm.
So the bad news is to get the experience I had is really, really difficult. Like it's really hard to
Sure.
get a job that's going to give you that many at bats,
Well,
right?
time, that's time. Right.
Yeah. But the fantastic news is there's now it's this little thing called the internet. And it's like, AI, and you can learn so much about anything so
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
So you want to pivot a little, I can give you some thoughts on that. The To me, right now with AI, like there's a lot of discussion around this, obviously, and people are worried, are they going to lose their job? Are they going to lose their company? And I would argue this is the greatest threat and the greatest opportunity to most businesses out there.
I agree.
So, especially in the ad agency or marketing agency business, there'll be definitely losers, people that, just collapse. I already know of some that, they were just doing content marketing, for example, and
Mhm.
they weren't adding value beyond just writing blogs. Well, when
Mm.
that becomes to do with AI, it's kind of a challenge. But for
Right.
us, we have more of an integrated agency, which is more complex, but being able to use AI, like I would argue that AI will help. This is not the good news and bad news, but I would
Mhm.
argue AI will help the smarter people, the more successful people be even smarter and even more
Mm.
successful because it's the creativity of how you use AI. So, in other words, like if I was going into a niche, I don't know, I'm going to go sell independent fishing shops. I could learn so much about that industry in minutes. We're talking a lifetime of learning can be accomplished by asking the right questions. What are the national, is fishing a growing industry? I'm making this up, but like, is fishing a
No, you're
growing,
exactly right.
where's all the money made with the fishing shop? Is it the lures, the gear? What about what's the role of repeat customers? How do fishermen choose their favorite tackle shops? Is live bait important? What are the keywords that matter most for like you just go on and on and on. I know
Mhm.
nothing about an hour. I would know a lot, and in a few days of study, I'd be able to talk to prospective customers.
No
So
question.
that's a way to shortcut it if you're not, sort of at my career stage. You can learn so much, but it still requires, though, the creativity to ask AI the right questions. But if you can do that, the opportunity is insane. Just insane.
You're absolutely right. I do think you need to be careful in terms of trusting it entirely in terms of what the output of what you get, but in terms of getting started and, like, determining if this is the direction you wanna go and creating a business, it's a great sounding board for that or any ideas you might have to really comprehend, "Do I
I
wanna
have
take it
an
there?"
idea for you on that, but you just gave me an idea. First of all, it is developing and there is
Mm,
funky stuff that happens. So, for example, I use Perplexity Pro. I got that free with my LinkedIn, so now it's what the one I use. There's others,
it's
obviously.
good.
But and I use it all day. I have a tab open, I have the
Yeah.
app open on my phone all the time. By the
Mhm.
way, it's amazing when you can just like can be driving, have a whole conversation with it.
Agreed.
It's just weird. But there are challenges. Like when Charlie Kirk was killed, I
Mhm.
asked questions that were their answers were just wrong.
Mm,
It's like, no, wait, that's speculation. That's not
mhm.
factual. Oh, you're right. Actually, thank you for being such a good consumer
So true.
and thinking critically. And there was a whole series of prompts that I saved somewhere that are actually scary because it was giving stuff that was hyperbole and speculation as though it was fact. And you're talking about an emotionally charged subject um, where and then you correct it, but how many people would bother to correct a machine, right?
Right.
That's
Mhm.
just really a problem. And then um, I asked something else that day about, our current president's uh, popularity rating, and then it went off, started talking about Joe Biden. I'm like, wait, I didn't ask you about Joe Biden. Like, they're still trying to figure it out, and so
Mm,
the especially anything political and or like for example, in healthcare, misinformation. So you do have to be really careful.
mhm.
However, going back to what I said earlier and what you just said, yeah, be careful, but think about it this way: if you're looking at it and you're trying to get your own business going, you can arm yourself and have reasonable conversations. So, like, if I were starting a business today, I can almost, if I didn't know what niche I was going to go into, the first thing I would do is research the heck out of it through AI and through the internet. But then, before trying to sell anybody anything, I would have as many meetings as I could with as many people in the industry as possible to get insight, to get understanding at a deeper level. And then that would be a great place to take AI and say, I heard this. Is that true? And they're going to say, oh, wow, that's really amazing. You know that. And then the next minute, they're going to say, oh, who told you that? That's stupid.
Mhm.
No, 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 no. But it's still, maybe another thing that might be helpful to your listeners that I've learned over the years is like smart people, you look smarter. Let me try to make this into a snackable quote for you. You don't look smart by telling people things. You look much smarter when you ask really good questions. So, telling people things that are smart are great, but the kinds of questions you ask are what build credibility. And going back to, in my experience, when I did those seminars, they were actually in the early days workshops. They were interactive. So I was live with about
Mm,
15 people interactively for 3 days. So, you have to be on your feet. But I've learned over time that I can control the conversation. I ask questions to the answer that I already know because number one, I'm double checking it. But number two, the fact I'm asking makes the listener reassured that I understand them.
mhm.
And it also controls the conversation. It's hard to teach you everything I've learned over the years, but these are some of the things
No.
that are all for me.
And one thing you're skipping over is being an active listener, which is a
Yeah.
real problem in today's society.
And it's
Mm.
hard, like another thing we use at our agency, Fathom, for note taking. And it's shocking to
I
me
use Fathom as well.
that, yeah, I'm a professional communicator. I've done this for many, many years. I can usually go back after, but prior to this, whether I'm taking notes or not, recount like all the important steps, right?
Yeah.
So I'm good at that. But when I go back and look at the Fathom notes, there's usually two or three things we talked about that I didn't think was important at the time. Where still they're expecting a next step on, like, oh, wow, that's really important. So even then, I do this for a living, right? I'm listening to them. So those kinds of tools are really helpful to back yourself up. But still, at the end of the day, like I said, I could still talk through the important points from memory. That's so it's like I think it's a mixture of both. You need to stay because you can't possibly focus on every single thing that happens
No.
in a conversation. You need to have the big picture. But the Fathom has really been great.
Right, and by being an active listener, you get into the questions that are actually meaningful and important, and you get the information that you could get, but it requires you to be a listener and to ask the questions in a way that's stimulating for whoever you're talking to, in a way that you're getting a response that actually benefits you. even to get the right information, you have to be a listener in the first place. Any recap of a meeting in Fathom is only as good as what you talk about, right?
Right.
So you have to be that first.
Can I add another point while we're on this topic? So
That's a great topic.
years when I was a kid or teenager or whatever, I read something. I think it was Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a classic book from like 1920 or something. It's still out there, I'm sure, for free. The one of the things they talk about there is asking questions and showing genuine interest. And I didn't really get this book until much, much later. And it's not like I sit down and study it. It's just to remember this as a vague
Sure.
memory. But I do remember the idea it builds relationships, and it really does. Like, if you're curious, that's why I mentioned going back to the AI. I'm, just naturally curious. So that really, it's like now that it's so easy to get the information I'm curious about, it's insane. I'm on this thing all day long. I've always wondered about this. What is the deal with that?
Yeah, it
But when
allows you to be as curious as you'd like to be.
it does, and when you're working with humans, though, if you're curious about them, it's really relationship building. So I'll tell you another thing, Jeffrey, that's interesting. I have my wife's best friend from high school. We're still friends with, and when we go out with her, like people think I'm outgoing. Like, no, 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 Nancy. Like, we can't go wine tasting on a trip without meeting half the people there. I mean, really, we just
I love
can't.
that.
And so, like, Nancy, okay, I've had enough. But she will actually just ask people, like, oh my gosh, what brings you here? And why are you here? And she's just naturally interested. Not everybody loves her, but 95% of people do when she does that, right? So she, can engage people really quickly and naturally because she's naturally that curious and that
Mhm,
interested, and she appears interesting. But even though we're talking about sort of personal relationship stuff,
mhm.
from a business standpoint, that matters in terms of winning clients. It matters in terms of managing employees and managing in terms of keeping in touch with your business. Another thing that's, nobody told me about this, once you become, the boss, when you start out, you're the, like the thought leader, right? You know everything
Right.
about the, nobody knows more than you. That's you. As you grow, you rely on more people and they have to be much better at what they do than you do. And you have to be okay with that and leverage that.
Mm,
And you have to have relationships with those people to bring out
mm.
the best. So these sort of soft skills are really important, whatever kind of business you have, for sure.
Yeah, and when you're growing like you have to constantly be on top of that kind of thing with people and managing and understanding your role and, being an emotional leader as well. Is there something that have you always been kind of geared towards that, or did you develop that over time, like that being a leader of people?
All right, great question. I will show you something if
You
you're
have
on.
something.
So I
I
never
love a
thought of
show and
myself as,
tell.
yeah. So for those of you that are watching this on YouTube versus listening, this is a little trophy I got. So I
Okay.
never thought of myself as a leader ever, never. And I personal development seminar. It's called Psi. It's one of those things that you've heard of.
What's it
Like
called?
this particular one's called Psi, PSI. But it's like there's
Okay.
others out there. It's one of those things where you go through 3 or 4 days in a weekend and then you end up crying and hugging each other. But it's a personal development.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. That sounds like a lot
So
of
there's
fun.
other things. Yeah, it's a thing. So people have heard of Tony Robbins or Zig Ziglar,
Yeah.
but there's also Saya's one. There's something called the Forum, which was based on us. It's a whole thing. You can look this stuff up. But anyway, this particular thing was something I did in my early 30s, and I had an MBA, and I told you I took risks, so I was poor with my
Mhm.
MBA, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I took this class, and it was very intense. And this happened to be a secondary class, and it was supposed to be a leadership class. And there's about 12 people that were doing this project. And when we got started, we picked a leader and he was super charismatic and everybody just looked up to him because he was good looking. He was outgoing.
Yeah.
And I was, probably more quiet and analytical in that particular environment. And so I'm like, sure, you be the leader. Great. And everybody's like, fine, fine, fine. But then about 2 weeks before it was supposed to be done, it was a mess. Nobody was like, we were all over the place. Like everybody was just confused. They're bickering, and the deadline's now looming. There's an actual moment, Jeffrey, where I just go, I'm not the leader, but I'm not waiting for this train to crash. All right, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. And everybody just like, boom, everybody changed. Like
Wow.
they just changed. And stuff started working, stuff started happening. It required someone to take the leadership. It just did. And that year, after that whole little process, it was a 90-day team thing we did. At the end of that, there was an award ceremony and there's a leadership award. I just assumed it was going to the guy, William, who was the nominated leader, and I won. I'm like, what? Like,
Really?
no, all
That's the
about just
award.
this is all about to see who's the real leader. And so that's why I still have that. It's all dusty now. But
That's
it
really
was
cool. You
actually,
still have it that accessible to you on your desk, and you were in
yeah,
your early 30s. That's amazing.
yeah. So but it was a moment. Like, I don't know, another fun, just sort of observation of life is like, in business, you don't get many moments. Like, there's like,
Mm,
there's just next year. Like in sports, you get a moment. You either win the game or you don't. And like, I'm
big
not a
time.
super athlete, but I do miss that aspect of like, you win or you don't. You get a moment.
Same
Business,
here.
it's just like a lot of stuff. But that was so. Anyway, so I haven't shown that before, I don't think, to doing one of these podcast interviews. So it was a great question though, because it was
Yeah,
in my.
it's just those kind of things that business owners and founders either kind of pick up as they go, or there's a moment in their life where they realize that, they can be this leader of people amongst, utilizing their skill set, because it is both.
It changed my life, honestly. I had never done that before, ever.
Gave you
And
confidence.
I was always the quiet, smart guy in the back that knew everything, but, was waiting for somebody else to do it. And eventually it's like, God, you guys are driving me crazy. It was how everybody rallied around it. So it was great.
Well, and it took you to being the leader of your agency and kind of propelled you to being who you are today. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's an evolution. I guess maybe another thing is we're, probably wrapping up here pretty soon. I would urge your listeners to try to, if not the same experience once, you hear sometimes, and it's hard to do this if you're like 20, right?
Sure.
It's hard to have perspective of life's a journey, but it really is. And it's not so much of like where you are, but who you become. And so, it's like if you try to do that and keep working on the fundamentals, like, am I the right spouse? Am I the right friend? Am I
Mhm.
the right, and how can I do better? And, like you can't see it here easily, but, I had, but prior to internet, I have all these books I've read, and I've read like not all
Yeah.
of them, but there's a lot of books up there. So it's like, I was willing to learn from others. Now today in this world is so easy with podcasts. I do podcast interviews for others like today. I have my own podcast. I learn from every podcast interview I do. I love doing them. It's like so much fun. It's kind of a commitment to being a continual learner.
This is the main reason why I love doing it too.
Yeah.
I have learned so much since starting, and it's kind of hard to imagine what life would look like without it. And it's only been like 2 months,
Yeah. That's
and
it's
I can't
great
imagine someone like you.
lessons. Like, good. Any other questions before we wrap up here?
Yeah, just about your podcast. What's the main topic that you try to cover, and how do you utilize it to help your business grow besides just learning from others?
Great. So, I've been doing the podcast since 2010.
Nice.
We did a blog for the first early years. We did it like sort of seasonally. It was like an enhanced blog. We would do it around conference season. Fun fact, fun secret for listeners. You can get great podcasts fast by going to conferences and seeing who's good and interviewing them either before
Sure.
the conference or after.
Oh, that's a great
So,
idea.
yeah, so I started doing that just naturally. I was making these rules up before anybody was really doing this, and
Yeah,
I
that's
never
you were
I
pre
just did.
podcast days, 2010s.
Yeah,
That's a while back. Yeah.
yeah. So I would do, and I was actually in a tech seminar once, and they asked about podcasts. This is like 2009. Like, oh, that's already passed. So anyway, so I didn't ask for permission. I just did it. And the conference leaders eventually told me, like, we heard about this and we first were pissed. We're like, wait, this is free. But I always made it free promotion for them. I always said, hey, coming up in our industry, there's a association called Shishmid, make sure you go. So I was giving them free press even in the day. And
Mm,
back then, I had 20,000 newsletter subscribers that I built through SEO and
nice.
paid search. So anyway, but then I did it seasonally, but I decided to get serious about it, much more serious about it again a couple of years ago. And so, I had a couple hundred podcast episodes in the can. So I was able to go back to, past guests. And now today, like we seem like we're everywhere. And LinkedIn, by the way, is such an opportunity for B2B. It was before, it was a sort of a job search site. But now, like, I don't know, maybe a third of people that are in business are really active on it. So those people think we're everywhere. It's like we were just all over the place. So it's just really good thought leadership. We do a lot of different content. So we do podcasts and blogs and ebooks and, webinars and all of it. But the last comment before we go on that is people feel like they know you. So it helps bring your personality to life in a
Exactly.
way that
Exactly.
if your readers are interested or your listeners are interested in our podcast, I'm pretty easy to find. You can Google me or just go to healthcaresuccess.com and navigate over to the podcast. In our podcast, It's free, and it's about really innovation in healthcare and marketing. So if you're interested in innovation, you're interested in healthcare, you're interested in marketing, that's really our beat. I leave it pretty wide. I
Yeah,
don't just talk about like pay per click or SEO. I keep it much broader. So that's why it's more thought leading content than very tactical. So we have some amazing guests. I'm really proud of our podcast.
that's great. Yeah, I couldn't agree more on all facets of doing a podcast. It gives you credibility, it grows your network, you learn things. There's just endless benefits to doing it, and yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Right. I've got to go actually to go
No,
talk
you're
to you
good.
about another. So I appreciate your time, Jeffrey, today.
Thanks for joining me, Stuart. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. Maybe we can connect again in the future, and looking forward to getting this out there on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
Good deal. Thank you. Bye bye.
Have a good one. Bye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, or really anywhere you get your podcasts. And maybe you can share it with someone you know that is either interested in business, interested in founder stories, kind of hearing the behind the scenes of why people do the things that they do, and just in general, good conversation. So be sure to subscribe and follow us everywhere.